This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Flava Naturals. See for yourself what a super burst of flavanols can do for your brain and physical health. Go to flavanaturals.com and use the offer code BOB for 20% off your first order. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Transcription services provided by transcribeme.com. Visit them on the web at transcribeme.com/beancast for up to 25% off. That's transcribeme.com. Episode 493, Technological Screw. For Monday, April 30th, 2018. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. Ad tech offers lots of promises to brand managers, but with innovation at a fevered pitch, not to mention the costs of training employees on every new platform, many marketing leads feel reluctant to delve too deeply. How should ad tech handle this? We'll discuss. Also, do brands still need a social presence? Amazon's ever-growing ad business? Unpacking out-of-home advertising for Netflix? Plus this week's Ad Fail 5. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the editor of AdPulp and creative director at Bonehook Marketing, Mr. David Byrne. Hi, David.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much. Great to be back on.
Oh, my pleasure to have you on. Now, next up, we have the founder of Future Fourth, author, speaker, Mr. Dave Delaney. Now, this isn't going to get confusing. Two Daves on the same show. One's David, one's Dave.
And it reminds me of a good old Kids in the Hall song, These Are the Daves I Know. Look it up. If you don't know it already, look it up. Trust me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, also with us, we welcome back Research Director for Customer Experience at Gartner, Mr. Augie Ray. Hi, Augie.
Hello, good evening. And I just want to say Happy National Shrimp Scampi Day.
There is a Shrimp Scampi Day? Fantastic.
There is.
Oh, no.
And finally, we have board member at Mashburn Enterprises and president and chief creative officer of Allscope, Mr. Jonathan Sackett is here. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Bob. Hey, you guys. I got to tell you, I made friends on the pre-show. These guys are great.
Me too. This has been great.
That's awesome.
That's what technical difficulty.
Have a good night.
All right, take care.
That's what technical difficulties will do. They make friends in the end. So fantastic.
Right.
We've all lived through something. Well, let's jump right into the topics. First up, every time you turn around these days, there seems to be another bright and shiny tool in the ad tech arsenal. But for brand managers and marketing leads as a whole, there's a double problem brewing. One is obviously that it's complicated deciding which tools to deploy, and training employees to use them is always difficult. But the second is the scary proposition that going too deep too quickly could be disastrous when the next big thing arrives on the scene and you've already invested millions in outdated technology. So, David, we all agree that keeping pace with innovation is essential for brands, but how can a brand justify going deep on a technology when the pace of development will make the investment obsolete within a year? I mean, what's your take on this situation?
Geez, Bob, tough question. You do realize I'm a creative director.
I do.
In other words, I don't know anything about this. I don't even know anything about media buying. So take whatever I'm about to say with a grain of salt, and gentlemen, please jump in to help me. But anyway, thank you for the question. I do think that there is a line to be drawn on how much can be brought in-house. It seems that everything under the sun is being brought in-house today. And I think there are some very good reasons for it. In this particular case, ad fraud and all the money that people have wasted, companies have wasted many millions of dollars, is clearly a great impetus to look at this and say, we must be able to do this better. If we can't trust our vendors, who can we trust? We can hire our own team. We can save money. So I definitely see some good in it. But I do think it's all about the scale of your company, the culture of your company, as to whether it even makes sense to put this type of investment in your own in-house team and technology, instead of really just hammering out a better deal with your vendors and understanding more about this data science and how to manage it.
I love the way your answer is going, mainly because there's logic to why I asked this question to you first. It's because you don't know a lot about the technology and the decision-making process going through things. And I think that's what a lot of brand managers feel. I mean, they are really good at managing their brand. They're really good at managing the people within their organization. They have a great grasp of the strategies going forward. But the technology mystifies many brand managers and many creative marketing leads. And I think that is a problem. I mean, it makes it so that it's ultra difficult to make a decision on which platform to go forward with. And I think that your answer is highlighting exactly what the problem is. With such an opaque situation that you're dealing with and in trying to figure out which particular marketing platform is the best choice for your brand, and you're going to spend millions of dollars on it. How do you make that decision when you know that within 6 months the entire landscape's going to be changed, and it's going to be potentially a losing proposition to invest in this platform right now? I mean, can you see the logic in why I'm going after you first, David? I mean,
I can see the logic, but it makes me laugh, because what I really wanted to say was, so let me get this straight. If I understand this, what we're talking about is programmatic and display ads. So at the end of the day, we're going to get better delivery of display ads.
No,
So
we're talking about the broad scope of marketing ad tech. We're talking about the email, integrating email into your ad spend, into your CRM platform, into all the different ways that you interact with your customers, your social platforms. There's so many tools out there to manage all these marketing requirements on a daily basis that it becomes
is CRM part of ad tech?
It can be. It certainly can be.
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead,
the
Augie.
issue is, the thing that I think that you're hitting on a lot of really interesting and related topics. One of which is that the technology is going to continue to evolve, and it seems to leave everyone behind. The other is that there's really a need for talent that in order to keep up with this stuff and to know how to connect it all and make it work, and organizations really struggle with that. Some of them end up outsourcing it. But the thing that I really like about you mentioning CRM is that the important aspect here is that regardless of what happens with the technology, you need to get your first party data in order. And truthfully, that's a lot of the problem with ad tech nowadays. So there's a part of me that wants to say, and I understand that this is pretty crude and a little naive, don't worry about the technology, worry about getting your data ready, because that will benefit you whatever happens in the future. But this is always going to be a struggle. I mean, it's an arms race.
Yeah, it's not
definitely
going to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, these are great points. All I was going to say was that, and I've worked for companies in the past where, we've made that mistake of purchasing and training on software that ended up being, a failure at the end of the day, which ended up costing tons of money. I think a big part of it is about your network as well, getting to the CRM side too, but getting to your actual personal professional network and being able to tap the shoulders of industry people to be able to ask them their opinions on, like, if you're looking at vendor A or product A, B, or C, as, let's say, in this case, your CRM solution, and getting, talking to colleagues and people that work in either in the same industry or even competing industries, because at the end of the day, a CRM is a CRM. But talking to them and finding out what they're using, the pros and cons, and then getting almost like going on Facebook when you travel to a city you've never been to, and you go on Facebook and you say, I'm going to Baltimore for my first time. What should I do there? And all your friends chime in.
But it's not
more of a private.
It's not just the fact that you might make a decision that's wrong, just flat out wrong, and you need to get the best advice from people. It's the fact that there's so much being developed that is completely unknown to you, and within 6 to 12 months, it could completely change the landscape. So why invest deeply on one platform when you know that it may go away within a year and you may need to go into a completely different platform?
It's the same thing with like buying new technology that's so expensive, is that at some point you've got to bite the bullet or you're still going to have a flip phone.
But there's
You
still,
know?
at least with technology, you have like a 2-3 year cycle. You know, the pace
Right.
of technology innovation in the ad tech space is like every 3 months.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think what I would add to this is I think we all agree there is nobody better at understanding ad tech than Jonathan Sackett. I think we all
I
agree,
think we
right?
all agree.
But if that, okay, but that being said, I would say this: the rule of thumb for me has always been I've been chief digital officer at a couple of the biggest firms, and what I've found is that cutting edge can make you bleed. And I think that you have to have one foot in reality and one in the future, but you have to tread, to Bob, to your point, you have to toe lightly when it comes to the future, because where are you going to hedge your bets? The thing is that you've got to, I think a lot of this comes down to trust, whether it's your vendor, your partner, or somebody who's employed by you. You have to know that 24-year-old kid is going to know the technology a heck of a lot better than you, but you have to ground that 24-year-old kid in experience. So
Right.
it's going to be a yin yang effect the way I see it. But like I said, I think it comes down to cutting edge can make you bleed. It's not always the biggest, baddest, best because it's the first, because let's face it, Yahoo was before Google.
I
Well,
like what Augie was saying about getting the data together, because that to me seems to be critical, and it's the cart before the horse situation. We want to try this great technology or send out this great campaign. We have all this, we have these lists, but as a creative person, I'm always, sitting there wondering, I've spent hundreds of hours developing these direct mail campaigns for you or whatever, but who are they going to? And that seems to me to be sort of like the missing magic in a lot of this, is that we're supposed to know our customers, we're supposed to know our prospects, we're supposed to be able to do one-to-one and custom experiences and all this, but it seems to me that isn't happening, and that's a concern.
One of the things that always bothers me about any kind of new technology, new implementation, is that we tend to forget the basics of marketing, which is be objective driven. You should be able to point to a specific objective that you're trying to achieve as a marketing department and say that this particular platform is the best solution for this marketing problem. And that's what we should be striving for. I get the feeling that a lot of players out there in the marketing space are so focused on, we need a marketing technology platform and we need to set, they forget to set objectives, or even worse, because this platform is able to do things that they really don't understand yet, they're not able to set objectives that are meaningful for the brand, because they don't understand that it's possible to actually solve a problem that they didn't realize was a problem. I mean, Dave, what's your take on that situation? I mean, it's just like you said that you've actually been in that situation yourself. I mean, you've actually been deciding what kind of platform to use. Do you find objective setting to be lax, or was it completely on board?
In the example that's in my head, I mean, people were on board with what we were trying to achieve with what we had purchased. The trouble was that it just had too many kinks in it. And had we perhaps done better due diligence on vetting that software, we might have known ahead of time maybe not to go for that, or maybe it wasn't quite ready for prime time.
So was it not meeting your objectives, and you just really didn't vet the software enough to know that it wasn't meeting your objectives, or was it more that there was more that needed to be done that you weren't ready for when the software started to actually gear up?
Yeah, I think ultimately it just wasn't. Yeah, it just didn't. It wasn't. I think, and I wasn't in the buying side of the decision side of this software, so I was really just a user of it. But it was a logistics software basically, and it just didn't do what it was supposed to do, and we ended up having to spend tons of money on consultants coming in to help us customize the software to meet our needs. And then at the end of the day, we realized this just isn't doing it.
Well, and because it's so complicated, I think we're seeing people turn to some of the more of those walled gardens, right? I mean, Facebook and Google for all of their challenges make things pretty easy if you want to target. Ad tech seems to make it difficult, and I know that again, overly broad. One is becoming more difficult, and the other hopefully will become easier. But I do think that marketers are beginning to gravitate to things that they understand better and things that they find easier. And let's face it, things that are less costly in the end in terms of making your money work for you.
That point needs to be highlighted, Augie, because what I think the underlying thing that you're saying is that because walled gardens work so well, it makes them a safer bet to go for. And so in that same spirit, the bigger platforms, your Salesforces, your Adobes of the world, they may not be perfect, but are they a safer bet because they represent a bigger garden that you can play in and, actually gives you the opportunities of M&As and doesn't make you have to bet on a single player, but you can bet on one player that is bringing all these different factors into bed with you. And I know that I'm not here advocating for one of the big platforms. It's just more from a practicality standpoint. Does it make more sense to go after the big platforms and to invest only in those types of players as opposed to the smaller players? I mean, Augie, would you say that be the case, or would you argue against?
Well, I think it depends on the size of the client, right? I mean, so if you're a really large client, you've got opportunities to hire better talent, and you've also got some opportunities to spend a little money piloting things with some of those up and coming, and new ad tech sorts of platforms. I think if you're more mid-sized, you're going to stick with what works, and you're going to stick with something that, as you point out, is going to continue to stay on the cutting edge. And maybe as a result, you aren't going to have to relearn the whole bloody world every 6 months because some hot new thing comes along. So I definitely think there's part of it, but ultimately the other thing, I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but ad tech costs a lot, in the end, when you begin to look at the value chain and everyone gets their ounce of your blood. One of the benefits of using some of the other things too is that your money works a little harder for you. So I just think a lot of this is going to get easier. I hope it gets easier because I just think it's ridiculously complex right now.
Dave, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I really do think, without speaking to what specific platform we're talking about, right? Like, I think it depends on the size of your business. It depends on what solution you're trying to find. So if it's like a CRM thing, and you're a large company, then maybe Salesforce makes sense, right? But if you're a smaller company and it's maybe not a CRM, but something like a social media monitoring system or something, then maybe you could test the waters with something small and new. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think if you're a large brand with a lot at stake, then sticking with the trusted names is probably a good idea.
If you use like Marketo or something like that, and you focus on the fundamentals and really work your list, and then they get acquired to go out of business, it's fine. You could go to Salesforce at that time. You've done the hard work. And I think that's the important thing, right? Is to learn how to use these systems.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
To a certain
and
extent.
Also finding out whether they can, whether you can export and import into one into the other. Like, I know, like, I've had a blog that I moved from WordPress to Squarespace, and I could import all my blog content from WordPress to Squarespace really easily. So, and vice versa, by the way. So, yeah, if these solutions play well together, that's a bonus right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing about data portability is an essential question right from the start. And that goes right back to Augie's initial comment. Get your data straight, get data all in order. Well, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk next about whether brands actually still need a social presence. It's an interesting argument based on an actual situation in the UK. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about chocolate. The flavanol antioxidants in dark chocolate are great for you. And no one, absolutely no one, I'm not going to guarantee it, I'm just saying no one does chocolate better than our sponsors, Flava Naturals. Look, here are the facts. Science supports that the flavanols in dark chocolate benefit brain function, they benefit heart health, and they benefit exercise performance. But the trouble is, to get enough flavanols from your average dark chocolate to actually see these benefits, you're going to have to eat like 5 bars or more, which is not good for your waistline. You're going to get fat eating that much chocolate. That's why I was so excited to discover the Flavanatural system. Now, here's how it works. One Flavanatural bar made from ultra-premium cocoa beans crams in the flavanol benefits of 5 typical dark chocolate bars at 1/5 the calories. And their sugar-free mix has the benefits of 9, count them, 9 typical dark chocolate bars with even fewer calories. Put it all together, and let me tell you, with all the stuff I've been eating recently, I'm feeling like a super strong brainiac on this stuff. It's amazing because they shipped me a whole bunch of product, and I am absolutely loving it. Now, these bars are some of the best tasting chocolate bars I've ever had. I'm not exaggerating. These things are delicious. Whitney thinks so. I think so. And I took their 10-day challenge with their mix by simply adding it into my morning cup of coffee, and I could immediately feel the benefits. I'm sounding smarter, aren't I? I mean, when I'm on the show, I'm sounding smarter. It's because I'm eating chocolate. Which brings me to the big opportunity for you. My high-functioning chocolate-enhanced brain tells me that you may want some delicious super chocolate as well. And if so, I can get you some for 20% off. Just go to FLAVANaturals.com. That's FlavaNaturals.com. Order the 10-day challenge packet. Get some bars to try. Why not order a couple cases for the entire office? You got an office manager around. Tell them I want chocolate in the break room. And at checkout, you just enter the offer code BOB. That's B-O-B. Just look for that offer code block and enter in BOB for a 20% discount off the entire order. But hurry, offer is going to end on July 31st, so you want to get that order in soon. That site again is FlavaNaturals.com, offer code BOB. If chocolate is your weakness, let FlavaNaturals be your strength. And we thank them very much for their support of our show. Wow, I love doing chocolate ads on this program. It's such a...
I'm hungry now.
You had me at Flava Naturals.
Well, I hope you all order some because it's amazing. I love this stuff, especially the coffee one. I love that coffee bean chocolate. It's amazing. Well, anyway, getting back to the show, a chain of 900 pubs in the UK did a remarkable thing. J.D. Wetherspoon decided to close down not one, not two, but all of their social media presence, all of their accounts, claiming that after weighing benefits against liabilities, they believe that the move would create no lasting or no meaningful impact on their business. Augie, this seems like a play out of your playbook. I mean, you're always talking about the fact that brands are doing crazy stuff on social media, but is it wise to completely shut down all of your accounts? What's your take on this move by J.D. Wetherspoon?
Yeah, listen, I've been, down or at least realistic about social media as a marketing mechanism, at least from the organic perspective. I think we've all gotten there now, but 4 or 5 years ago when I started talking about it, people thought I'd gone a little crazy. But, the fact of the matter is it still makes sense for brands to be on social media. And the reason to be there isn't because you, the brand, are not getting what you want. It's because customers expect you to be there, and there are benefits that accrue. I think the real challenge is that this organization failed to figure out how to scale efficiently managing what it was doing in social media, and as a result, it pulled the ripcord. Now, the thing that's frustrating to me is that customers do in fact check Facebook and Twitter and other places for information about brands and restaurants, and there's plenty of data on this. I'm an analyst, so I go out looking for data. And a 2017 study by Toast, which is a digital platform for restaurants, found that social media was the most common platform for restaurant advertising in 2017. And of course, if you don't have profiles, there's no reason to do a whole lot of advertising there. Zagat did an interesting study that found that 75% of the diners who say they browse food photos say that they've actually chosen a place to eat based on social media. And HEMG, which is a HGEM, which is a hospitality management firm, said that 2/3 of consumers overall will say they'll visit a restaurant social media pages before they eat there. Now, I don't know that all those data points are exactly, believable. They don't necessarily meet my taste test, but even if they're directionally accurate, there's just no reason for a restaurant, or frankly most other brands, not to be there. People are going to ask questions, they're going to tag photos, they're going to look at Facebook and the recommendation feature, which I'm sure you've all seen. If your brand's not there, then people can't recommend you.
I'm absolutely sure you're 100% right about this, that people will say and actually follow through on going to social media pages before they visit a restaurant. But if they don't find the social media page, what's the next solution? They just Google it. And if they're Googling it anyway, and they're seeing all these pictures and they're getting all the information about the restaurant and they're able to look at reviews via Google, why should you bother with a social media account? I mean, just because they can't find you on Facebook doesn't mean that they're not going to turn around and go Google you in the end and find you anyway.
Well, here's I want to bring up a quick story. We had at one point had managed all 16 brands of Tylenol. Okay, so we were the agency of record for them. And Johnson & Johnson had they had a mandate from their attorneys to not be present on social media unless they felt confident that they could respond to every single post on every single site, everywhere, every time. Okay.
Yeah, don't get me started on pharmaceuticals. They were under some massive restrictions in terms of the social things that they could do.
And it's ridiculous. But here's the concern. When Children's Liquid Tylenol was taken off the shelves temporarily because there were supposedly metal shavings in the product. Do you guys remember this at all?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so what happened was it was not metal shavings, it was duct tape. So some pieces came off of a pipe somewhere and got into the product. Well, what happens is if you don't have a social media presence, you can't combat the negativity. And what happens is now this mom group came out and said the Tylenol is putting metal in our children's medicine. So if you don't own your social media presence, somebody else will. So I always look at it that your social presence, your digital footprint, whatever you want to call it, your ecosystem, it has to be the game of Risk, where you plant your armies all over. Anybody younger isn't going to know what the hell I'm talking about, but you plant your armies for offense and defense, and that's what your social presence needs to do. And if you don't own it, somebody else will, and that's even more dangerous.
The thing is, though, there has to be a there when you arrive as a consumer. So what's the point of arriving on a Facebook page for a restaurant or some other business that isn't managed, isn't updated, doesn't, build the brand or really interest you even to go there? So I think there's this management question, especially when you have a retail chain and each unit has their own social presence. REI does this.
And there are social media platforms, so there are social media platforms that are designed obviously for distributed organizations like this. And while generally I will tend to agree with you that having something current and fresh is important, for a small restaurant chain, if your photos of your food are a month old, that to me doesn't mean nobody's going to see it or care should they arrive there. More important, though, I think, is when people ask questions, right? If they don't see your open hours, or they've got a complaint, or they've got a concern, or they want to know if you're gluten-free, most people are going to turn to social media these days. And while your point may be accurate, Bob, that people will ultimately then just go to Google, I still think that you're missing out on that. People do have an expectation that brands will be there. They do have a preference for engaging with brands in certain ways. At least some people do. And ultimately, if we're going to mount the argument that people can always do X if you don't do Y, then it's like, well, why have phones, right? They can visit you. They can ask you their questions. And so, to me, it's a very me-oriented thing. It reminds me in 2014, another UK company, ironically, Eat24, famously canceled their Facebook page and made a big blog post, and they blamed Facebook, and it's because Facebook lied to us and we're not getting what we wanted out of it. And I wrote a blog post back then. It's the same argument. It's very me focused. It's why am I not getting what I expected out of Facebook? And go ahead and check. E24 is back on Facebook because it's important.
And I think I want to clarify too for you, Augie, because I do agree with you. I think that the move to go completely off of social media is a knee-jerk reaction that doesn't really have an objective behind it, other than to stir the pot.
You and your objectives.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I believe in objectives. I talk about objectives. I mean, everything I do is objectively based. I mean, I try to have that kind of that solution approach to marketing all the time. But I think something you said, we should really highlight it. I mean, there needs to be a separation between social promotion from social interaction and support needs. We look at social media as one big blob of tactics, and it's not. I mean, there is the stuff that David's talking about, which is you go out there and you create content and you interact and you actually promote things via social media. And then there's the social reaction platforms where you're basically monitoring what's going on in the marketplace and you're responding. And I think that out of the two of them, the latter is the more important thing. I've always said that listening is the most important thing you can do on social media. And if you have a listening campaign and you're using technology to listen to your consumers, you've already got a social media win. Every other decision you make on social media needs to be taken very, very carefully and very, very deliberately, because it'll get you into trouble. But listening will never get you into trouble.
Yeah,
Well,
I manage. Yeah. I was just going to say I managed social media for Griffin Technology for about 5 years back in the day, and I had searches for like 70 different products, all saved to search for those product names to see when people were talking about them, and then be very quick to respond. So I think what you guys are saying is absolutely correct. I mean, in the case of this gentleman with these pubs, I mean, I think Augie, you mentioned the phone. Like, if he didn't like the phone, you can't just ignore it. Right? Like, people are still talking. And I think as a consumer personally, if I talk about a brand online on social and someone representing that brand replies to me, I feel great. And so if I tweet, what are the hours of this pub? Or I wonder what the menu is today for lunch. If I get a response, I'm way more likely to go and do business with that business.
I want to give this pub guy a little bit of cred, because I don't think it's just a publicity stunt. I think he might be aware of, where's my ROI on this? What am I spending? What am I getting?
Yeah,
it is a legitimate question. And if you're a pub in England, people just walk in.
Yeah,
they don't need social.
But they are though. Customers are taking photos at the pub and posting them on Instagram.
Once they're there, but they're going to walk in there.
What's
it's
the
not
ROI
just
of
it's driving them?
What's the ROI of answering the customer care call? Right,
Mm-hmm.
You do it because you have to. And increasingly, I mean, this is Bob's point, and it's also been mine on the show and off of it, is that social isn't monolithic. It isn't one thing. And so they took a very marketing-oriented approach here. I am not seeing the benefit out of what I am spending. They didn't think about people who are going to ask questions, people who are going to ask for recommendations on Facebook. And now you have no location, so nobody can recommend you. They didn't think about things from the customer's perspective. And maybe there isn't supposed to be a directly short-term attributable ROI to everything you do. I still think of it a little bit like the telephone was an amazing invention that revolutionized everything we do in the organization, but nobody walked around talking about having a telephone strategy. They just used it in 28 different ways to make it work, and that's the way social media is. And so pulling yourself off may seem like the smart thing if what you're doing is investing in content and you're not seeing return. But 3 months from now, this is a pub. The chain had 900 pubs, if I remember.
Oh, was it that high?
Yeah.
They're going to get thousands and thousands of people asking questions and expecting answers, and they'll be back.
It's a complicated. It's even more. Yeah, I think that there's an even more complicated thing about this. There's an even more complicated thing about this particular story, in that if you know anything about the way the pub system works in the UK. you have a holding company that owns a whole bunch of individual pubs that are all named different things, like Pig and Whistle and Thumbnail and Jerk Off. I don't know, but you know, you have all
Can we
these
say
different.
that?
I love that place. That is my favorite.
You know,
pub.
I'm never going back there
Last
again.
call it jerk.
And what happens? What happens is, you know, you have no single brand unity. Over like JD Weatherspoon, you have a whole bunch of individual pubs that have all kinds of different names, and being able to have a consistent experience across all these different pubs is essential, and it's going to happen only through a social platform. It can't happen through a Google search like I suggested earlier. It needs to happen through this. So
Yeah, and I think you know, if he was smart about it, they would create you know, like not a brand guide specifically, because each one has its own brand, right? So that makes sense, but at least an overall social media guide to give them information about how to listen effectively and how to respond and what to do in a negative situation or a positive situation, you know, in both situations.
Yes,
But there's more to
also-
this story. But by the way, there's more to this story too, because
Guys,
the Guardian
guys.
article, I read a Guardian article about it, and he was for Brexit and very vocal about it, and so they got a lot of negative reviews because of him being vocal about Brexit, and I think that's part of the reason, perhaps, why he wanted to just shut it off.
Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with Brexit. It's the most important meal of the day.
Right.
but I think okay, thank you. But the one thing I would say is we can never forget, and I want to reinforce this point, and I want to hear Bob say that's a good point, Jonathan.
okay.
Okay, everybody ready? Is that a good social media presence can have soft benefits too. That's number one. And number two is a good social media presence influences search and it can repress negativity. So if somebody's complaining about your product, service, or brand, if you're strong enough out there, the people aren't going to find that message. They're going to find the message you want them to find.
Good points. Good points, Jonathan.
I'm
Thanks, Bob.
dreaming about this pub. I'm dreaming about this pub where there's no one with their phone out. You know, do you ever go to a coffee shop where they don't have Wi-Fi because they are doing that on purpose so you do not sit there with your screen? And in a place like a coffee shop or a pub where you're supposed to talk, I kind of like this.
I know. I knew that you would, David. This is like right up your.
I'm the same way with televisions and pubs. I prefer a pub with no TVs, because unless there's like a major sporting event, but in most cases no TVs, so you're not distracted.
Definitely
which
prefer
sucks living where I live.
Definitely prefer TVs that get turned off when there's not a sporting event on. Well, I got to move on to the next topic. Amazon's latest financials show us that their ad business is their fastest growing sector, representing $2 billion of their revenue. Now, I know they make a lot of money, but $2 billion of the one's revenue is a significant portion. The question is, Dave, does this represent positive news for brands or indicate trouble in the future of maybe a pay-to-play system from a company that already has a stranglehold on product search, visibility, and purchasing?
Yeah, I don't. It's a great question and a really interesting story, by the way. And I think it's not that brands are in trouble so much as it's brands have to be on point and understand how to use Amazon's advertising platform and start using it now so that you know and understand how to use it. I read that predictions by Comscore estimate that more than 50% of searches will be voice-based by 2020. And I'm really interested in how that will play a part in this, because with Echo, you know, most people have an Echo now, and the Alexa will answer you. So anytime you ask Alexa to add something to your shopping list, you know, that's the key part of this that I find really interesting with how ads will work as well, is how it plays into the smart speakers.
Well, that's what I mean by visibility, because it's just like when you're searching on Google, yes, Google holds a stranglehold on search. We know that.
Yeah.
But at the same point, once you get off of Google, you end up on a website that has more information that you can then interact with the brand directly and possibly become a loyalist. Whereas with the Amazon search engine, which is more about retail, you never leave Amazon. Your entire visibility is based on that Amazon experience. And that, as a brand manager, is very important, as you wisely call out, but it's also troubling to me.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. But I do find that I'm so hooked on the idea of smart speakers and how like 1 in every 6 Americans now has a smart speaker, right? So and we go to Amazon to shop. That's we go to Google to search and maybe shop, but Amazon is where we go to shop and spend our money. So it makes complete sense why they're being as successful as they are right now. And yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important to have this as part of your strategy, or at least be thinking about this moving forward in the future.
Do 1 in 6 people on this call have a smart speaker?
I do.
I've
don't.
avoided them. I've avoided them like the plague. I don't know why,
Me too.
because I'm not fearful of technology, nor am I necessarily fearful of having a microphone in my apartment. Now that I'm no longer doing the station chief with an ex-CIA station chief, not happening anymore, so I'm not as worried about that anymore.
I've actually owned both Alexa and Google Home, and I found Google Home to be the better of the two, at least for now. More functional, gives you better information and answers. The thing is that for all the talk of conversational commerce, I still like the thing that I think we still have to work out. Like every turn of the technological screw, people sort of act as if we are going to reinvent human behavior. And what happens is that human behavior changes fairly slowly. And so, the internet didn't like revolutionize commerce for, to really start bouncing organizations out for 10 or 15 years, right? Even though some people back in 99 were saying it was going to happen in the next couple of years. And so anyways, my point here is that I don't know that anyone is going to use voice search to buy anything that they need to conduct any sort of research on, right? So you'll say buy kitty litter and it will put your favorite kitty litter in it. So it's great for those things that Amazon already knows about you, things you've already bought. But try having somebody try to buy a little black cocktail dress with their voice, just and no image. Just
Augie, Augie, I have a
Dick
question.
I'm
for
sorry,
you.
your parents Dick and what was their names? This would be something to have them try.
Dick and Kathy try stuff. Augie, I just have to get some clarification here. Did you say technological screw?
I did. Every turn of the technology.
Because you complete me.
So it's technological screw. Okay, that's
the point is that it's not exactly going to, I don't think, rewrite things quite as quickly as some people are claiming, because it is perfect for some things. It is not perfect for others. I'll tell you that when I had the Alexa, 98% of my use of it was to control Spotify. With the Google Home, I will use it to ask questions and get some more information. But they're still pretty basic and crude. So I don't think we have to overdo it, but it does force us to think about how we're going to operate in an Amazon world. If Amazon very soon, within the next couple of years, could be 1 of every 2 e-commerce dollars spent in the U.S., and they've got a $2 billion ad network running, it certainly does beg some questions about what that means. And I think it does, and rightfully should, scare a lot of brands.
Well, I want to move on to their final topic of the evening. Out-of-home advertising seems so completely old school, and yet not only are digital-only companies like Netflix using it like crazy, I mean, just ride on the subways in New York, we've covered this story before, technology companies and apps are the highest users of outdoor advertising. In the case of Netflix, they're even trying to buy a billboard company. So, Jonathan, what is it about billboards that represents such fascination for screen-only products? Why are we so focused on putting stuff out of home when the objective is to get people on a screen?
Well, I think we all agree that I know billboard technology better than anybody on the planet.
Not technology, because there is no technology in old school billboards. They're just
That's exactly right.
They're just vinyl covers, vinyl wraps.
Well, I would have to agree with Augie. I think that this is a non-technological screw, to be honest with you. But I think I believe this. I don't know, Bob, the old adage of if you're an advertising agency, you buy the billboard space because you want the CEO to see it on the drive-in.
Yeah,
right?
I've heard that. I've heard that saying, right?
Yeah, so it proves that your agency is doing their job, and oh wow, look at it, there happens to be a billboard, and this is my drive into work. But I do think that let's face it, technically, hypothetically, you are not supposed to be on your cell phone looking at the screen while driving. And I can tell you by the 16-year-old girl who recently hit my car, who was looking at her screen, I would have been happier if she would have been looking at a billboard. But that being said, I think that it comes down to finding the right initiatives to surround the right audience. And I still believe that there's a need for high touch, low tech initiatives. And I would refer to a billboard as that same thing. I think what happens is if you're driving into work or whatever, the goal of an advertising agency is to keep your brands and the brands themselves. It's supposed to keep it top of mind and surround the right target at the right time. So I agree with them to do something like this. Now, I haven't seen the offset of spend, and to be honest with you, with all of the look at we were agency of record of Geico for years. I mean, how many billboards do you see for Geico? A ton. So I think that again, they've got a media budget of over $1 billion, so you can still surround people properly. I think it's right now it's either hyper local for billboard or it's absolute mass, and there's no middle ground because Geicos of the world can afford it, and the local restaurant probably needs to afford it. That's the way I look at it.
You know, one of the best quotes I ever heard, and I'm going to butcher this quote because I can't remember it word for word, but Rashad Tabakawala once said at a conference that outdoor advertising represents the last true mass media out there because television is going away slowly into much more of a targeted advertising mix. I mean, it's becoming programmatic, it's going online, it's becoming streaming, and billboards, outdoor advertising, outdoor screens, all these different out-of-home advertising opportunities represent the last true way to get in front of a mass audience with a message. And you know, when you're trying to advertise a brand new show, it's all about mass, right, David? I mean, it's just like this is about mass.
Yeah, I was going to say too that this is an entertainment company, a content company, and you know, in LA, that's how movies appear on outdoor boards. So it's currency. It's a way for Netflix to say we are totally in this city, and here we come. And so I think it's great that they would buy the company itself, because then it's just free media placements from now on.
And it works too. I mean, there was a Jared Leto show on Netflix. It's a new movie, and there was billboards in Nashville where I live, and I actually saw the billboard. I didn't know about the show. I saw the billboard and actually ended up watching the movie, so it worked for me. What I really love are creative billboards that are interactive or you know, just out of the box, so to speak. So you look at like Dove always have really creative billboards that are sort of interactive and what have you. And I think it's those that earn their own PR as well, because people start talking about the billboards. And now I know this is, you know, this isn't like every billboard you see on the interstates type of deal, but when you do create something great, I think there's a good opportunity there too.
I was going to comment earlier. Somebody made a comment about how it's low tech, but I think anyone, if we had anyone on the call who was actually in the billboard business, they would be reading us the Riot Act, because even delivering and targeting billboard advertising is technology, much less digital billboards, much less, as you're pointing out, the future of digital billboards, which is to be much more interactive. So I think there's a lot of technology there, and that's coming. But the real point is, and I think, Bob, you hit the nail on the head, is that, you know, in an age of ad blocking, and, you know, we all know that's growing, and an age of subscription services that maybe people won't see advertisements on, you know, getting through that barrier still takes something, and billboards make it happen.
Well, billboards, depending upon the audience. I mean, I agree with that. But what I should probably clarify. What I meant when I said low tech, I was talking about the static billboards, and I was talking about high touch, low tech initiatives. So, you know, if you just got a static billboard or whatever, obviously for Dick and Kathy Try Stuff or something, like Mom and Dad, we were talking about this on the pre-show. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've helped my parents with their computer, their phone, their questions, and we all have a great horror mom story about doing that. I think that, you know, for Cracker Barrel, which is a partner of ours, in particular, the billboards work. Now, we were also talking about accountability. So how can you trace that back to that billboard. Well, you can't, because it's supposed to be part of the marketing mix, not the end all. So
you can in some cases though. Like there's an actual ad not far from my house right now. There's this big black billboard with white bold lettering that says something to the effect of "Your mattress companies are screwing you" or something like that, and it just has a URL. And maybe it was because I was in a market for a new bed, so I checked out the URL, and it's an amazing process. It's not it's a mattress company, but anyway, it was very creative. And so this URL had like a Tennessee sort of name in the URL, so they could measure from traffic going to that website to see, and then what conversions are happening when people do go to the site.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can't underestimate the power of out of home as a whole, both as a technology, as a technology, as a trackable mechanism, and as a mass awareness opportunity. I think it fits all the checks all the boxes. Well, with that, it's time for the Ad Fail 5. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with David Byrne. You can find him at bonehook.com. That's the home of Bonehook Marketing. Tell us, what's going on in your world, David? What would you like to promote?
Oh, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. I think I'll go ahead and promote myself tonight, if that's okay. Recently moved to Austin, Texas from Portland, Oregon, and been here about a month and been meeting a lot of people, looking for new opportunities, big, small, and otherwise. So I'd be very interested in any listeners in the Austin area who might want to meet with me over coffee or a beer, or anyone who's listening out there who might want someone to work remotely. I'd be interested in hearing from you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I've recommended David to an opportunity and they were very satisfied with him. So definitely go ahead and definitely do that. Next up, we have Dave Delaney. You can find him at Future Fourth, which is futurefourth.com. Am I getting the URL correct, Dave?
Yeah, Future Fourth, Forth. I actually have FOURTH that redirects to a funny page if you end up there accidentally.
Well, tell us, what would you like to promote? What would you like to tell us about?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And this has been great, guys. For me personally, I am a huge fan of improv comedy and trained with Second City in Toronto, graduated from there. I used to perform in an improv troupe. I had my own improv troupe. So now in my 40s, in Nashville, every 40-year-old dude starts a garage band again. I don't play anything, so I'm doing improv again. And what I've realized, I spoke at HubSpot's Inbound conference a couple years ago, and I've started something called my Communication Reboot. And what I'm doing is working with companies, coming in and facilitating improv workshops to improve company culture and communication. And the feedback so far has been amazing, honestly. So I would love to talk to folks about this.
Wow, that does sound amazing. So yeah, if you've never done an improv workshop for corporate retreats, it's a fantastic opportunity for you to learn more about how to interact with customers and other types of situations. So fantastic, you're doing that. Next up, we have Augie Ray. You can find him at Gartner.com, where he blogs proficiently, profusely, lots of P words. So tell us, what's going on in your world, Augie? What would you like to promote?
Yeah, well, two things very quickly. First, I completed a really big project. That is, I sat through Avengers Affinity War without having to go through the bathroom in the middle of it. I'm very, very proud of that. More to the point, though, in a couple of weeks, May 15th to May 17th, the Gartner Digital Marketing Conference is happening in San Diego. It is really a great conference and gets very strong reviews. And I work with a bunch of very smart people on the marketing team there. I'm going to be speaking about customer experience and what separates really great experiences from not so great experiences, and how brands can activate and enable those and reduce their risk when they're taking some chances. So I'm very proud of what I'm going to be presenting, and I hope some of your listeners might be at the conference and will stop in to say hi.
That sounds great. I would love to go to one of your conferences someday. Maybe Gartner could send me.
I'll see what I can do. I don't have much pull, though.
And finally, we have Jonathan Sackett. You can find him at both Mashburn Enterprises and Allscope, which is at allscope.com. Tell us what's going on in your world, Jonathan. What would you like to promote?
Well, first of all, as always, I'd like to promote the show. So
Thanks.
Bob's been a dear friend of mine for years, and I would hope that people would pass it around, share it, and sponsor it. More importantly, I would also like to promote everybody else on the panel because these guys are great, and you could do a lot worse than partnering with any of these guys because wicked smart, good people. So anything you can do to help those guys out as well. The last thing that I'll say is we're in the final stages of acquiring a podcast called Two Black Guys with Good Credit. And they've got a huge, I know it's funny, but they've got a huge following. They've done the NBA playbook for financial stability to help out the athletes. And we're launching through TuneIn Network. We're relaunching through TuneIn Network. And the guest for the May 21st show is none other than Jamal Mashburn.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
And that's and knowing Jamal through you, I know that this is something that's near and dear to his heart because he's very much interested in helping young sports stars to have financial stability and actually figure out what they're going to do with all this money that they're making. So definitely a really cool thing. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. You can even find out how to advertise in the program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And don't forget, transcribeme.com is now our official transcription partner. So we are providing transcription services. Finally, I know you guys have been asking for it for a while. So to thank them, please go to transcribeme.com/BeanCast, I believe, and you can get a special discount on any transcription order you make. So definitely go to that site and give them some business. And now it's time for the Ad Fail 5, a rundown of the lowest moments in advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. And first up, the ad-blocking Brave web browser, Jonathan, is projected to double its user base by the end of the year. Now, I know that this is only going from 2 million to 4 million, and that's only a drop in the bucket in terms of browser usage, but it does highlight the fact that ad blocking continues to grow because ads suck, right?
I think there's bad ads, there's bad partners, and in some cases there's just bad agencies. So, us as agency owners are going to have to find a way to combat that. And now, the numbers, I think you're right on the numbers, but still, it just goes to show how soon is Google going to buy them out and say, yeah, you're just going away. That's what I'd be concerned about.
Yeah, really.
I don't know. Chrome's adding ad blocking. I'm not so sure about that. By the way, I've tried Brave. Man, lightning fast. It's amazing how fast things load when you get no advertising.
Yeah, I've been trying it too, and I agree.
And you know what's neat, I think, about Brave is that you, as a user, can choose to pay the content producers if you'd like, which I think is fantastic.
You all are traders. That's all I'm saying. You're all traders. Okay, next up.
It's called pay to go away.
Next up, former Havas chairman Vincent Bellori. Did I get that right, Jonathan? It's Bellori, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Vincent Bellori was officially charged with bribery because he was trying to secure port contracts for his other company by using Havas's media arm to help African politicians get elected. David, this sounds like some kind of episode from Homeland. This is pretty scary stuff.
Exactly. And all I can say is, can holding companies just go away? Do we really need to be held?
Well, did anybody take an ethics and advertising course? Come on.
No. It's just like that's a big Farrah Bostic sticking point. She always says that, doctors and lawyers have to take ethics courses, but advertisers can just work without any kind of guidance whatsoever.
Moral compass absent.
Let's not act like this was so subtle, though, that, this poor experienced person could not have realized that they'd crossed a line.
Well, apparently it's even worse because our next ad fail is apparently Mr. Bellori is not alone in his misdeeds at Havas. Their worldwide director of public affairs, Jean-Philippe Dorend, is also under investigation by French authorities for complicitness in this whole affair, Augie. I'm just saying Havas has some serious problems if all this starts going down because this is an onion ready to unpeel.
Well, let's just say that WPP would like to thank Havas for these headlines.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah, after a 71% cut, right?
As if you Snapchat users out there didn't hate advertising enough already, Dave, the month of May will bring you unskippable video ads. It's finally here. I am ambivalent. I kind of feel like, well, Snapchat's got to do something, but I just don't know that this is the right move for them.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right move for them, but at least it's only on specific channels, so it's not like right across everything you're watching. But I think it definitely is going to annoy its users, and if they are listening on social, which I hope they are, I'm sure they will hear about it.
I'm sure they will as well.
Unlike the pub guy, right?
Yeah, he's not going to hear a thing. And finally, will a smaller new front, Jonathan, save the new fronts? After last year's disaster, the event is back in a scaled down form. But does anybody really care anymore? I mean, it's just like the new fronts were there for a specific purpose, to get us interested in streaming media as a thing. And now everything is streaming media. Even TV is becoming streaming media. So,
well, that's what I said. When I saw that, I thought, what's the objective here?
My objectiveness is getting around. I love it. Well, have something to add to this list or just want to discuss it, comment online, use the hashtag AdFail5. That's pound, AdFail, and the number 5. Well, that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an iTunes listener, we've also provided a direct link to the iTunes Music Store, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory of iTunes. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.